Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Land by Lindsey. This is our Farm and Ranch podcast. I'm very excited to talk about a topic that normally doesn't arise until well after the contract's been escrowed and everyone is ready to close. I am here with my good friend Nefi, and he is the president of ENV Title. One thing that I love about what we do is we have preferred partners that are specifically targeted towards the farm and ranch sale. Most agents out there are familiar with using their local title companies to close on a home. And that is a very, I could say in general, simple title commitment, title pool. When it comes to farm and ranch, and sometimes these ranches that have been in families for generations, that's not so easy, is it, Nefi?
I would agree. Yeah.
So really excited to dive in to that topic that most landowners and land buyers don't dive into until well after they're under contract and realize that they have this 60-page title commitment and there's all these reservations and exclusions, and they have no idea what any of this means, and they're supposed to close tomorrow. So we're going to kind of go through what the buyer and seller need to be thinking about ahead of time when they are looking for a property, when the seller puts the property on the market, some of the due diligence that they need to do, and some other high points. Hopefully Nefi can guide me because, I've been in this business since 2015 selling ranches, and there's still new things that pop up when we pull some of these titles because every ranch is different, So, let's just dive in here, Nefi. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the title game?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I had the pleasure of meeting Lindsey. It's been a minute, and I was actually just having this conversation just a short minute ago with her. She's a strong person. That's the best way I can put it. He didn't say that. Which is awesome.
We can be honest with our viewers. I think the word he used was I'm intimidating. If you know me, yes, you get all of me.
Yeah.
I'm not sugarcoating it for you guys. That doesn't do you any favors, and I want you guys to know everything that's out there. So
yep, and that's
I'm gonna shoot it straight to you.
And I love that. I love that about her. That's me also. I'm not as flamboyant. I'm quieter.
Abrasive.
I'm more
I think you wanted to say.
But about me, so Nefi Miramontes, this company, I'm actually partner. I'm also part owner. ENV Title. We just are rebranding. I've been in the title game since 2005, and I started more of as a landman examiner. That's kind of why I really have a passion for more challenging transactions. Piggybacking off what Lindsey said, the residential really is very cookie cutter. It's very simple. There are times that there's issues, that's a given, but farm and ranch, there's a lot more that goes into it. I do a lot of commercial as well, and they go hand in hand. So 2005, since then, I've closed every type of property you can think of, from a $7,000, acreage property to single site. Over 90 million was a single site that I closed in Pflugerville, to 300 plus billion multi-state portfolio. So really, anything that she brings to my table and says, "Hey, Neff, here's the situation."
He's highly qualified, basically, is what he's trying to say. And I agree. He's one of our very few preferred partners on the title side. We like our clients to take and meet our preferred partners. It's really good for you as an owner or a buyer to do your due diligence. And really do the research, because at the end of the day, you can't really take anybody's word for it. You got to dive in, look at the testimonials, interview the people you're going to work with, just like you interviewed, hopefully, your agent to sell your ranch. You're interviewing all the partners that are going to help you close that ranch and build your portfolio moving forward, whether you are on the buying or the selling side. So speaking on being on which side, a lot of people in this industry, we're kind of trained. And a lot of you agents out there listening know what I'm talking about. You're trained to use the local title company or whatever title company the buyer's agent throws on the offer. In farm and ranch, because it's so intricate, finding those specialists is very important. So the regional side of things really doesn't come into play. And I say, most of the time, for example, when I used to sell houses in Kerrville, Kirk County, we would use the local title company. Well, when it comes to much larger ranches, larger portfolios, those title companies may not have the resources or the know-how or the practice to be able to do, a $90 million transaction and all those things that come with it. So leaning on your expert farm and ranch agent to talk about what options you have on the buyer's agent side. Also, I like to take the lead on the seller's agent side. So we're going to start there. So most people don't think about a title company until they're writing the contract. And our team and the way we do business with Nefi is we actually start from when we get the seller and finding out, all those intricate things that need to be done to list that property. And one of those things is we call it a market ready title. Before the property hits the market, we do a pre-title. And so, Nefi, can you kind of explain the process, the pros and cons, and kind of how an agent needs to come to you when they have a listing?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely all pros. So I would say the majority of the transactions that I close that are farm and ranch, pre-title is king. I can't stress that enough. It's not just so that I can have the contract once it goes under contract. It really is a service. You're going above and beyond to your client to make sure that before your listing goes live. So that's really where you want to capture it. I also have residential brokers that do this same thing because they know the value that it brings to their client. So on a farm and ranch, pulling pre-title, going back to what Lindsey said earlier, it's been owned, this family has owned it for hundreds of years. And, in those hundreds of years, there's been a lot of handshake changes or, documents that were written up. I mean, I have so many different scenarios.
Easements that maybe weren't filed.
Road access, that was one that came up, recently on a property. But what we ask of the realtor or the broker is, when you are working on getting that listing, is have that conversation with your client of saying, hey, we're going to work with Nefi and his team because they have, decades of experience closing farm and ranch. They're going to pull title before we go under contract. That way there are no surprises when you receive the offer, because that's the thing that kills, all deals, the quickest is you get a cash offer. You didn't do your due diligence. The seller tells you one thing and, they meant it, it was their honest answer, but the seller doesn't know title. And there's so many different circumstances that can come up, whether it's an heir, a divorce, access to the property. I mean, there's a list, and if you can give them, all we need on our end is their blessing. If they own the property before you go live on the contract, is, have them send us an email, a phone call. I need something in writing giving us their approval. Listing agreement works also, but that way we start communicating with your owner, and that's really, if they have any difficult questions, it removes the liability from Lindsey and yourselves, and I'm liable to respond and give those answers that they're looking for. And then once we pull title, that gives us a clear picture of all of the requirements. So in the title commitment on Schedule C, that's what the title company is working on clearing, whether it's liens, judgments, divorces, estates. Again, the list goes on and on. But if we can clear up all of the matters before you receive an offer, again,
there's no hurdles between you and closing.
Apart.
Absolutely. Because some of those things you mentioned, and I actually had a deal that had to do with a divorce, that it wasn't that the divorce didn't happen and wasn't filed. It's, some of these rural communities don't do electronic filing. So in this one scenario, they told my client he couldn't close on the property because they couldn't find the divorce decree. And even though he was divorced, but this was, 45 years ago. And come to find out, we sat down with the title company. But if I would have done pre-title, we would have handled that when we put the property on the market, rather than, thank goodness we had buyers that didn't get scared, because as you know, there are buyers that, one red flag throws up, they're done, they're out.
Yeah.
In that particular scenario, we had some great buyers, but it took us 2 months to close. And there was nothing red flags on my end. Just what Nefi's saying, this tactic that we use on our team and for our clients is to set them up for success. So you have all the things cleared up, because at the end of the day, the seller can believe that they did everything right, but what about the seller they bought it from, or their great great grandfather? And even here in Texas, we get into you're going to have to help me with this. We get into where the land is actually still like in the Republic. So there's a lot of title work that it takes time. And if we're looking at farm and ranch closings, 10-day closings to 30-day closings, and we have to clear up something that might take a month to track down an heir or a piece of paperwork, that's times the killer of all real estate deals. They could lose their funding. Something could happen to the seller. It could be on the other side. So very exciting to have this opportunity to let the seller's agent know that this is possible. Also, if you are a seller, letting your agent know, hey, listen, I would like, does your title company do pre-title? Can we do that? Can we get that service? I want to know and want to make sure that what I'm selling is mine and there isn't any clouds on that title. And we have a clear Schedule C. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Listen, hey, I'm still learning. I know how to sell a ranch, but there's a lot of documents and resources I use to make me sound smart. So really excited on that part. So in those types of scenarios, he said it was very simple. All you have to do is send over your listing agreement and have your client confirm that, one, they are selling the property and they'd like pre-title pulled. So it's as simple as sending Nefi and his team an email. Now, other title companies may be a little different. However, I do know that they have the ability to pull pre-title. Everybody has a different requirement, but with Nefi and his team, that's something that we do with him. And it has led us to a lot of success in getting to the closing table a lot more efficient. Not just faster, but efficiently, less of those unforeseen hurdles, because we've looked under that blanket and we've seen what's down there, and it's not scary. There's not a monster under the bed, so to speak. So, and then moving, I guess, to the buyer's side. I don't know how to explain this, or if you can give some examples of it, but buyer's agents like to take and just write just their go-to title company. And when it comes to something more intricate like farm and ranch or commercial, can you kind of explain why having a title company with a little more experience in those larger transactions? Can you go through that?
Yeah. So again, if I work with brokers like Lindsey, I work with investors, purchasers. For me, when a transaction, I'm going to just give a little bit of context. For me, when a transaction comes in, the contract comes in, yes, I give this service to Lindsey and her team, but that same service, even if this is a stranger that I'm helping, I'm going to give them that same service. And that service itself generates, organic leads for myself as far as, doing business in the future. When I have a seller, that seller is not just selling me, that one ranch. They're going to turn around and buy the next ranch or buy, several ranches. And what they do is, regardless of them being the seller or the purchaser, if they're selling, we're closing it because we've done the work. If they're purchasing, when they send in, and please forgive me, I'm not a broker, but on the commercial transactions, there's always, the letter of intent or the LOI, depending on how intricate, the transaction is. So the majority of the time, when anybody that I'm working with, they will send the LOI with my information, depending on the transaction, we'll attach, a PDF to it that says, here's why we're using Nefi. Here's his experience, his knowledge and understanding. And we have a working relationship, and he closes all of our transactions. It is rare that when you give an offer like that it's not accepted. It's a courtesy. I know it's happened on my end to where I've done my work and due diligence, to the seller, but this purchaser is someone that has purchased a lot of transactions, and so they have the way that they do business, and it's a cost of doing business. I'd love to get all the deals, but that's not going to happen. So to me, it's not about getting the transaction. It actually just happened this morning to me. I had a commercial broker that is purchasing a property in Austin, and he put my information on the contract, and I've closed just this last year. I think I've closed 7 transactions for him. But in the contract that he executed, it clearly said that the seller's title company is where the contract was going. And so I've been corresponding with the purchaser And I actually knew I knew the listing broker and the seller themselves. And so I called the seller this morning and I said, hey, here's the situation. And he gave me the rundown on why it needed to close at that title company. And I excused myself from the transaction. It's a good transaction, but it's like, hey, this one's not going to happen. But I'm meeting with this listing broker, the seller. So the person that did not direct the business to me, I have a meeting with them next week to capture more of their business because it was a reintroduction. It's somebody that I knew. So it's like, I'm never going to do anything that's going to jeopardize your business or the transaction itself. I'm hyper focused on just being value. Like I want to create, value to you, value to your clients. And regardless of where I am in the transaction on a day-to-day basis, like I help competitors with underwriting questions. So really like and I preach this, the biggest value add that I can bring to you and yourselves is, let me be your title person. Whether the transaction is with me or not, if you're not getting the response time, the answers, you need more information, a better understanding. Like that's where I would like to help you. And then, in hope of earning, any future business.
Mm-hmm. So, just like real estate agents, we talk about who you hire matters, staying in your lane. Like I only sell farm and ranch. So agents will refer clients to me because this is what I do. And so, I think what I'd like you to elaborate on is, we have residential agents that only sell houses. And then we have commercial agents that only do commercial. And we have farm and ranch agents that only do farm and ranch. When it comes to, there's title commitments for residential. Explain the level of expertise and some of the intricacies of having to do more in-depth title work, like in farm and ranch and in commercial.
Yeah. So, on residential transactions, the restrictions are there. Like nothing's really going to change on a restriction, on the house next door. There are ways you can change those restrictions, going to the HOA, getting a board.
But most of it's pretty cut and dry.
It's all preamble. Yeah,
yeah,
it's all there. There's not much that's going to change regarding a farm and ranch property. Again, you're looking at it like you're representing the purchaser. What is the purchaser's intent? Are they looking to purchase the property for, it's a living ranch, cattle farming, like what is their intent? So the most important thing on the farm and ranch ones is not Schedule C. Like Schedule C, the requirements that the title company or the seller has to complete for the transaction to close, like those are going to get taken care of. Again, depending on the title company and the knowledge and understanding of what all those requirements may be, that's going to give you a timeline of how quickly it's going to get done. But all of the requirements are going to have to be completed. So regardless of who you close with, those Schedule C requirements must go away. Schedule B is what your purchaser on the farm and ranch one is looking for. Like, okay, what can I not do on that property? And that's where it really comes into play of like, educating the realtor or the broker of you want that pre-title. And the beauty of having pre-title, so circling back to the seller, is if they've already done pre-title, you're not waiting, like they give you the option, you're not waiting 10 days for the title commitment or 20 days in certain counties. We already have the title commitment and it takes us 10 minutes to revise it based on the purchaser's information. And so you're helping the buyer's broker by giving them that title commitment in 1 to 2 days, so that they can do their due diligence.
Can you imagine that, guys? 20 days to 10 minutes? I'm telling you, there's something to this. It amazes me that brokers don't educate their agents on pulling pre-title, and also title companies. If somebody's out there listening that's in the title field, educate your selling agents. This is a massive benefit to them winning a listing. We pull pre-title to help you be successful once you get an offer and get you to the win, get a win for the buyer and seller, and to have them be happy with how their closing's going to go. So, it sounds like common sense, guys, but you know what they say, it's the least common of all the senses. But, a great way to explain that, Nefi, one of the other things that I love is being the source of the sources. And as a farm and ranch agent in a complicated transaction, there are things that come up. The transaction in question we were talking about with the access issue that we actually had. Another issue we had is that seller, it was an heir. A family member passed away. Didn't know really much about the property. Didn't know if they knew they had minerals. They didn't know anything about that. They didn't know where to go. So being able to reach out to Nefi and say, hey, Nefi, because we are the source of the sources. We are, the explainer of promulgated forms. And that's it, guys. We can't give legal advice. So being able to take your partners and say, you know what, I trust Nefi. They have a pool of sources as well. And let's sit down and say, okay, to resolve some of these issues and to get this out in the open and to understand what we actually are selling, let's find a landman. Let's find, an attorney. Do you need an estate attorney? Are you going to do a 1031 exchange? Where are we going with that? So in that scenario, being able to turn to Nefi as these things come up, because they, like you guys know, it doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't happen initial meeting. Oh, I want to list this, and and I'm the signer. It's like, oh, by the way, what do you want to do with minerals? Well, we have some. We don't know what we have, and what do we do, and how do we reserve them? So having partners as of a quality like Nefi that handles those farm and ranch transactions, commercial transactions, multiple portfolio transactions. That's really how you separate yourself. If you are in the niche markets of higher end real estate, higher end sales, that there's just more moving parts, you're going to need a partner that matches you on that. So we actually have 3 preferred title companies for farm and ranch specifically in our office. Nefi's one of them. And so it's really helpful to tell people, who you hire matters. Just like the real estate agent down the street is not the same as me. We're not the same. We went to the same class and got a basic license. And from there, it's pretty much what we decided to hone in our craft and what additional education and expertise we wanted to move forward to. So I wanted to bring this to light, and I was really excited Nefi was able to meet with me today. He's like, what am I getting into, Lindsey? But, educating those out there, not just the agents, but the landowners. Listen, you're going to hire everyone, regardless of the agent taking the lead and kind of holding your hand through the process. Ultimately, you're the decision maker. So educating yourself as a landowner, as a land buyer, as to why you need to choose certain title companies to be put on your contract is very important. So we hope that you had a chance to learn a little bit about that today. Nefi, is there anything else you kind of want to cover that's overlooked in our industry?
Really, and you gave me an idea while we're doing this. I know that it exists in other fields of real estate, but just creating something that's like, hey, these are the items that we're going to need. This is what, like, you proactively as the realtor or broker are giving to your client this information, guiding them, and really, like you keep saying, preferred partners, it's let them know, like, hey, I have a title team. So like you to say, hey, I have a title team, and he's going to call you today. That's really, that's where it is. It's the value of, one, not just communicating, but having the knowledge and understanding of what those questions are going to, come up. That would really be it. On my end, I work with a lot of foreign nationals, and not last year, 2 years ago, I had a group from California that sold a lot of property to Amazon, and came here to Texas, and I think they bought 6 or 7 ranches, and it was just cash. And it was so really, and the reason that I worked with them, I was introduced to them through a broker. I'm originally from Mexico. I work with a lot of foreign nationals, and there's another difference of, like, we do business a certain way here in the States. Any other country, they have the way that they do business. So having the ability, at least for me, with Mexican nationals, of being able to be an extension of you. So like, hey, you may not speak Spanish, you may not understand it, but say, hey, I have somebody on my team that is more than willing and able to. That really would be the other thing, because there's a lot of rules and regulations that fall on that end.
You know what? Let's dive down to that rabbit hole, because we have time. And I think sometimes people are like, "Oh, you told me who you use and who we need to work with." But selling to foreign nationals is a very hot topic and can be very can be lucrative, but it can also be very scary.
Well, there's tax consequences, and there's a lot of rules and regulations, and that's where, like, I was on a call just a few weeks ago with one group, actually 2 groups. One particular, this purchaser is looking to purchase a lot of land in Texas, and they really wanted to understand how, what tax consequences or costs they would incur, because they're paying cash. It's not financed, and really it's going to go back onto the agent or their counsel. It's like there's so many moving parts, and depending how big, like going back to the portfolio piece, like how big is this purchase, what is being acquired, you don't want any risk on you as the broker. That's the most important, and really to everyone involved. But it's more of having the ability to create, like this particular one. I'm trying to remember how it all played out. Similar to you saying, "Hey, Neff, I want to do this podcast with you. Do you have time, in the morning?" Is, "Hey, Nefi, can you jump on a Zoom call this afternoon with, we have 2-3 people, in Mexico, 2-3 people in Colombia, 1 person in Spain. Can you jump on so that we can all have a conversation and have an understanding of what this is going to look like?" And to say yes, like let me clear my schedule and we'll all jump on the call and have all these answers for you on the topics that they're looking at. And when I say, like, it's like you have your preferred partners, I have my preferred partners. So like I have, one primary oil and gas attorney that, like, he's the person that I go to if there's issues. I have a CPA because I do work with foreign nationals. This CPA is going to tell me, "Hey, Neff, like, direct your client." Like, again, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, but I have individuals that I can get them on the phone and they can answer those questions.
You're the source of the sources. Remember
that,
guys. That's my motto. You are the source of the sources.
Yeah.
The only thing they allow you to do is to read the promulgated form. So let's keep your the real estate obligations in check and through that window. So, you talked a little bit about international buyers. So we live in a world where it can be very scary to talk about selling to foreign nationals. And I want to talk about our buyers. Most of our buyers are good old country boys. And although we can't discriminate in real estate, and we shouldn't, let's educate the buyers and the buyers' agents on when you're approached by a foreign national and how to qualify them and things of that nature, to kind of listen. You guys know I'm forward, and I'm not going to cut through the BS here, but it can be very scary. Hey,
I like your realness.
Well, there's a buyer out there, a seller out there that's like, I hear all these scary things on the news, and there's in Arkansas there was that the China owned a piece of farmland, and there are risks, and you have to validate both the buyer and the seller. Let's get that right. So when it comes to something like an international international seller, and you're on the buyer side and you're this, ranch owner from Texas, what are some things that they need to do to kind of validate, or who are some resources they need to talk to make sure that, this is going to be a healthy sale and not something that may be destructive, or, a lot of scams are out there, guys. So
this would be specific to, like, you're representing a purchaser.
Yes.
On this one. Again, my go-to is let me help you.
Yeah.
Like, no, I mean, it really is. No.
So you call Nefi. If we're scared, we're going to call Nefi. I know. I am. Like,
no, really, I mean, it needs to be a reputable title company. It needs to be a known title company, reputable title company. Who are their underwriters? You as the buyer's agent, again, even if I have this relationship with this foreign national, like I know that they're good for it. I'm not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize.
Yeah, no, and I get that too. If you guys think about breaking this down, if you represent a seller and you have someone like Nefi pulling the title, and you have a foreign national and their representative come to you, filtering them through the title company, because the title company is the one that's going to, in the end, underwrite the deal. So they're going to have to.
The risk, we're going to assume the risk. So really, my answering, a simple answer for your question is, make sure you are closing with a title company, because even if you are closing with an attorney, there's no insurance when you close. And nothing against attorneys. There's a lot of deals that are done with attorneys that are reputable, that are legit.
Oh, right.
but there is no insurance.
You just
with
lost
attorneys.
half our audience. They're like, what do you mean I can close with an attorney? That'll be another podcast, guys, another day on closing with attorneys.
There is no title. There is no
title commitment.
Yeah. No title policy. Yeah, there's no insurance. Yeah,
okay.
And that's the insurance. Like that's what they're falling back on. Is like if you have a purchaser and they close with me, like if something happens tomorrow, a year from now, 2 years from now, that insurance policy is what protects the purchaser of, hey, like you insured this. So let's say it's a $2 million ranch and I didn't do my job to insure you, then I will give you $2 million. And I now have this property that I need to figure out what happened.
So in the end, and we didn't cover this and we probably should have in the beginning, why do you need a title company? And the most important part of a title company is getting title insurance on the deal. So it ensures the validity, at least this is how I explain it. And please, I want your words too. It ensures, it validates the deal. So if something ever happened, they're insuring that money for both the buyer and the seller. But can you dive into really what that title policy is and kind of how underwriters work? Because a lot of people don't understand underwriters either.
Yeah. So I mean, when you go under contract, you send the contract into the title company, and you can Google all of this or ChatGPT it.
It's not on your website?
It's there, yeah.
It's all
there. ENVTitles.com.
It's also in by the way, sidebar, as you guys know, in the description below on this podcast is going to have Nefi and his team's information and his contact info. So you can call their office if you have questions. They're open to that. So just letting you know, they'll have your info when this goes live.
So really, contract comes in. The file goes to the examiner. So the examiner is the individual that is going to examine all the records, pull property records from the county, pull information from the court, seller information, primarily seller information. The examiner creates the title commitment. That title commitment is reviewed by the escrow officer. If it's a farm and ranch deal, I have a team, but if it is a farm and ranch deal, then I oversee it. I'm very hands-on when it comes to those deals.
He's our favorite.
So deal comes in, commitment comes in, we review it, we let all the parties know these are the requirements that we're going to work with the seller. These are the exceptions on Schedule B that your purchaser needs to be aware of. They're acquiring this property. This title insurance policy is going to be subject to all of the requirements all of the exceptions that are shown in Schedule B. So that's really going back to what are you looking for? It's those exceptions, because that's what we are not going to insure. And those exceptions are going to be, minerals, that's a given, it's just boiler template. But it's also going to show if there are existing leases. So really, it gives you all this information. And a lot of the times, some of that information may not have been filed of record, but your seller has copies. So it's really, communicating. When we do a pre-title, it's us, we start the conversation with your seller and really, gathering information that's going to benefit the whole of that contract and the closing. The underwriter comes into play when there is something. So let's say something comes up on the exceptions that's I'm trying to think of something specific. Maybe it was access to a road for a specific time period. Then that underwriter, you say, hey, Neff, I need to take that, that exception doesn't exist anymore. Then that's where that escrow officer goes to that underwriter and says, okay, now you start communicating with the purchaser, or the purchaser has their attorney. The underwriter comes in more of they're counsel, they're attorneys, but they're looking at it. Can we delete that exception and take that risk? Or it's no, we're not going to delete that exception. So it's really having an escrow officer, one, that knows how to present this information to the underwriter, because the underwriter does not want to say no. They want to insure it just as much as I do. But if it's something that they're not willing to take the risk on, then it's that's the risk. That's my risk.
Yes. Yeah. And so in that scenario, because I've been in a place where an underwriter said no, you have what some agents don't know, and some title companies won't do unless you force them, is that you can find another underwriter.
Yeah, so we have 4 underwriters, but really, if one underwriter says no, I really have to understand, okay, why did you say no? Really understand it, because if one says no, likely the other 3 are going to say no. Depending on, there is some flexibility, but when it comes to the farm and ranch transactions, it's it's rare that I get another one to approve it. And really, if one tells me no, then it's like, okay, now I'm on the hook. Like my risk increases because if I overstep their approval, then I'm assuming all liability.
The reason I bring that up is that we were closing at a title company that only used one underwriter, and their underwriter said no. And thank goodness we had a very intelligent escrow officer, and she went and she thought that, this to me doesn't seem like an issue. And she actually found an underwriter that was okay with accepting, and it had to do with a power of attorney. So I was really glad that she was able to handle that, but I never thought, it was one of those, I'm busy doing my real estate game. I was like, man, I didn't think about, she found an underwriter that would ensure that power of attorney. So,
similar situation.
Once again, the difference between how a average residential title company works versus the ones that do more complicated deals. So those are little just nuggets of knowledge I learned along the way. And like, I didn't know how many, having multiple underwriters, that makes me feel good, because if there is a problem, we want to solve it. We want to offer comfort and solutions. And you did bring up something that I do want to tap into. A lot of agents that represent clients are terrified of having their client have an attorney. How valuable is it for the buyers and sellers to have counsel?
I mean, it's when a contract comes in and I see that there's counsel, I know that it's going to go smoother, just because, again, as we know, and again, we have a lot of residential deals. I love my residential business, but there's more emotion tied to the residential transactions. When it's farm and ranch, again, it can be emotional, when there's a lot of history there, but a lot of the times it's a business. So when you have counsel that can represent the purchaser, then it's like they're looking at it, okay, business, what are we purchasing this property for? And having somebody that understands why you're purchasing that property just gives a clear guideline of, hey, this is what we need. Like going back to the underwriting question that you asked, prior to this year, like most of my days were communicating with attorneys, objection letters. And it was, they're looking, we want all of these exceptions deleted because we want the ability for us to use this property, what we intend to do with the property. And when you have counsel that understands that, again, it removes the emotion. It's business.
And then you start solving the problem and seeing what is obtainable in that scenario.
Correct.
Another thing with our partners, we do have attorney partners and agents out there listening. Please do not be scared to tell your clients to reach out to counsel. Also, find yourself some individuals, some attorneys that you can work with, because you would be surprised how many attorneys, they don't ask for a retainer. They just ask that the clients call them. And if something happens, they're there. And it's pennies on the dollar in the grand scheme of, a $3 million, $4 million. I mean, you're talking about something, it could be credited at closing, and can avoid a huge mess later on, especially when you're looking at some of the, option period reservation, some of the inspections, some of the time that both individuals have put into play, for that to be wasted because we didn't advise them to get counsel to help us solve those tiny problems down the road. So I think the best, summary of this entire podcast is being prepared, and a lot of that pre-work, that pre-title, getting them with counsel, getting them with the sources that they're going to need at the closing table. Like, don't wait to the closing table to start doing these projects. Don't wait to the closing table till something goes wrong to call an attorney, because then he doesn't know your client. He doesn't know the title company. He doesn't know the deal. All this isn't scary. Like I said, his information's down below. Welcome to call, reach out. Nefi and his team, have training courses. Please follow them on all their social media. They really are a great resource, and they're into giving value back to the agent. Also, buyers and sellers, don't think that agents are the only ones that can call. Definitely, if you want to learn more, or in the future you're going to do this, you're going to sell your property, you're going to buy a property, you really want to know about the team and maybe what's due diligence beforehand, definitely reach out to them and let them know.
And last thing I'll say is, yeah, I mean, and you know this, but we close Texas, so I mean, it doesn't matter where the property is. If it's in Texas, we got you.
Awesome. And he, like you said, he does do international portfolios, but
Yeah.
that's a whole other ball game.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all. We're very excited that you could join us today. Like I said, please hit up Nefi. He's been a dear friend for a long time. I'm so excited that he puts up with me and my deals and all that jazz.
Thank you.
Y'all have a great day, and please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.